Hi everyone, and welcome to Concert and Conversations. My name's Emma. I'm the Operations and Outreach Manager here at Ars Lyrica, and I am here today with James Wilson, who is a French horn player who has accompanied a bunch of Ars Lyrica concerts, and I'm really excited to chat with him today. So James, thank you for being here. I'm really looking forward to talking more with you about the horn.
Yes. Yeah, well, I'm a professional horn player. My training, my early training, and then through college and grad school was on modern horn. That's a modern horn. This is the horn that I play usually now. I also have a descant modern horn because I was a principal horn in orchestras for about 25 years. And I also play in the Santa Fe Opera Orchestra in the summers. And of course, those are all modern places. I've always had an interest in well, not always, but when I first heard the natural instruments, I was really intrigued by that sound. I heard recordings of the Hanover Band in when I was in college. And also was listening to some of the David Monroe early music with the cornets. I even took a turn at the cornetto when I was in graduate school, which is a funky little, it's a tube with holes like a flute, but it's played, there's a shaped mouthpiece in the end of it looks like a horn, like a goat's horn or something, but it's actually made of wood and carved out. But it actually has a shaped sort of cupped mouthpiece, sort of like a trumpet. But it's a very different thing. And that would have been around when the sackbut was around. And horns, I think, were sort of mostly just trumpety sort of wound conical instruments of any sort that could blast some sort of rhythm. And there were different codified rhythms for different things, for town musicians, announcing the hours, or for on the hunt, the arrival of the king, or whatever it is. I think it was very interesting at the end of Prince Philip's funeral recently, when the two bugle corps of the Scottish Guards and the Royal Navy played their couple of pieces. I thought they sounded really, I don't know how many of you may have seen that, but I thought it was really great. And they sounded beautiful. It was a beautiful stirring sound. So the bugle plays, even though it looks low on this music if you read music, but the horn is very short. And so it has the same series of notes, but they start much higher. And so where they're playing is actually where she's pointing. That's the G. The low G that they play, and then the C, E. Actually, no, yes, that's correct. Just up to the C, E, G. So an octave and a fifth, and that's as far as they go. And so they move those notes around. On the horn, however, the horn is placed, it's a longer instrument, and so in the sort of money register of the instrument, we're in a place where it's more scalar. So usually when you hear the horn, it's up here, it's up in where in the top of the treble clef staff. Yeah, from the G at the top of the staff down really to the second C at the bottom. That's our whole range. So there become a lot more possibilities for the instrument, and so that's very interesting. What then has to be resolved is, I don't know if you can see, the black notes there are the ones that are out of tune, and that happens in every harmonic series. But what basically this allows, more than the bugle, which was a unison sound, is what we call horn fifths. And that's because, with the sort of exception of the black note, it's a sort of in the cracks of the piano note, and that's what a lot of what we talk about as horn players, is that if the first horn, the first part of this makes use of a 5-note scale. And when you do that with the two instruments, whenever the first horn plays the note that's presented, the second horn always plays the note that's corresponding. And so in this pattern, this is what you hear all through Beethoven, Mozart, Mendelssohn, and earlier. And it's what's so characteristic of the horn. So this is my Baroque horn. I kind of wanted to show, if I can make a little thing, that the Baroque horn is here, and its slide set, its crook set, is this here, and these are couplers that allow it to go. This is the length of a whole step. And this is the length of a step and a half. 100 years later, we get to the classical horn, which you can see side by side has a wider bell. It looks like a more substantial instrument, even though it will wind up being of the same length, if it's in the same key. But again, with its terminal crooks, that's this set in the back here. So 3 couplers. This is to get everything that Beethoven and Mendelssohn wrote for. Crooks from the very shortest being high C, all the way down to, when you add everything together, the lowest would be B flat. And so the Baroque horn is a different sort of animal. We know that people would have been probably been tinkering, like the early Model T Ford, you know, where you had to actually tinker with the thing. It was like a kit. They would have to tinker with things, especially traveling musicians, because you would be faced with whatever the organ in the town was. And that's where you would tune your instruments to. So for the horn players, having a set of bits, in my set of bits that I should pull them out so that you can see. So it's just a little sleeve of brass. I'll show you how the horn goes together and how we've made some accommodations. So this is a mouthpiece that I got 2 years ago. They're different than today's mouthpieces because they're made out of sheet metal. Usually mouthpieces are made out of a plug of brass and they're lathed out. And so the whole shape is made on a machine. This is a sheet of metal that's turned around to form, then soldered, the edges soldered together, and then hammered out to make this shape. And then a separate rim, because they didn't have the technology then, is made and soldered on top of that. So it makes each mouthpiece custom in the same way that they would have been back in the day. There would have been, before industrialization, wide variance between custom items. So this is also a Rick Serafinov find from Europe somewhere, and so that's what I've been using on my instruments. I actually had put this sleeve is responsible for lowering the pitch of the horn by a half step. So if you want to know, like when you see the organ pipes and they're all in their ranks getting taller and taller, each that much represents a half step at this length of tubing. And if this were all pulled out straight, it would be about 12 feet long, a little over 12 feet long. So we're all convinced that the players of the time did not use the hand in the bell. It's not really made for that. You can see the difference in the flair of the instruments would have made your ability to get your hand in the bell For one thing, it just would have altered the sound. It wouldn't have been satisfying. So, but this bell was made to accommodate that more, and also probably, like everything, to give more sound, and also to give it a larger bell is a more veiled sound, perhaps.
I think it's interesting also to mention that the reason that Baroque horns had to tune to organs is because tuning systems were not universal until
Right.
maybe like the what mid 1800s.
Right.
So every town had a different like pitch for its organ. So
Yes.
being able to lower something a half step if you're a traveling musician is really helpful, because otherwise you literally can't play with that town's organ.
Right. Unless their tolerances for intonation were different, but I think they probably understood. So the notes that are in tune are easy, and that's fine. The notes that are out of tune are a conundrum, and we have to figure out how to deal with them. So you probably can see the bumps on my horn, what the makers or the players or whomever figured out sometime when they started playing the music again, which really started in the 1950s and 60s. And the old instruments were discovered and people were playing on them more. The range of the Baroque horn would have used from G below middle C up to high C. Those open tones are so with those notes, with just the open tones, you can get quite a range of expression, and that's what I think we're so drawn to. That's what I like. That I like to play the Mariani, which is just on the natural tones of the horn. And I'm going to change also, I'm going to put a coupler in. That's a step and a half to be a horn in D, which is, you'll hear the difference in sound a little bit. This is a natural horn piece that shows how we can play melodically.
Lovely. What a beautiful piece. And I think it's so cool that composers are able to take not that many notes and make motives and themes. And also that you as a player can make it so much more expressive. When you're repeating a note more than once, you can make each note sound different.
Yeah, that's fun. And so and what's interesting too, I was able to take some lessons with Annika Scott, who is the first horn for John Elliott Gardner in the ORR group, and I saw her on. I got a chance to play for her in a master class in when they were on tour a number of years ago, which was probably 10 years ago now. But she was really great. She's really a superstar as far as I'm concerned. But she was very encouraging. I went when I was going to play the Brandenburg with Ars Lyrica. I had some lessons with her about the piece, and she said it's a very interesting piece. You know, the tessitura is it was probably played by a trumpeter. You know, there would have been you probably would have had brass function, you know, basic brass players, and most of them were probably trumpeters that would come into the church for grand occasions, you know, when he wrote the pieces. Bach was inscrutable. In fact, I found out later he wrote 4 pieces for an instrument that we have no idea what it is, although there's one player who's reconstructed what they think. It's called a corno di tiralsi, which is a pull horn. So it's some sort of trumpet that moves enough to get the notes that we have trouble with. So they were working on that. They were trying to, so clearly they were trying to figure out the bad notes, right? How to, and I also read in my studies that the quoniam tu soli sanctus of the Bach B minor Mass, apparently at the first performance, the horn player retired quickly in the solo and was covered by the organ. So it's not like, you know, the stuff, you know, we think the stuff is hard. Well, they thought the stuff was hard. And so we're trying to figure out how to, you know, make it not sound hard, or figure out how did they do that? How do they do that? So, and this is really tricky because, you know, like the Mariani I played, it's really just about making the music. The notes are all there, or playing the piano. I don't have to worry about it there. I don't have to worry about where the notes are in terms of satisfying intonation. But when with Bach's notes, I begin to do that. And it's interesting, as I learned from Monica too, Bach was a master too. He, in the opening statement of the 2 horns is a reference, if not a direct statement, of hunting music, a hunting call. And that last thing is written. I've heard some groups rationalize the triplets against the other 16th notes that are happening to make it all together. I don't think that was intended at all. And also the dotted rhythm that's at the end of that phrase is what Annika told me is what they would have called a tau. To me, it's like the reference to the barking dog. So it's sort of a slur, but it's a dirty slur. It's rustic. It's rough. So he starts out with this, you know, everybody's and we're playing this hunting thing with these towels, but then in a snap, all of a sudden you're playing with the 3 oboes and the fiddle section in this very, you know, Baroque. Everybody's, you know, you're doing the motor thing all of a sudden. Oh, that's the other thing I had to learn. As a modern horn player, you have strings on keys and you're sat in the back of the big orchestra, and so you can empty your slides and roll things around. There's a choreography to the natural horn that I had to learn. You have to take the mouthpiece out so you don't hit anything. You have to hold the corpus of the horn. You have to hold this. You can't hold it down because then you have to work too hard to get the water out. But and then get these things back together. There may be some water in there, and water is very dangerous because it makes the already slippery thing even slipperier. So it's really tricky. So what I also got with this horn was, and I should have sent you I should have sent this to you, and I have to find it. It's my piece of paper. It's a little drawing, and I can't even. Well, I hope I haven't lost it. It's a piece of paper that tells me which of these 4 vents is best to open for which key, for which note. So basically, with this, I know that I'm trying to favor this vent hole. If I open it, it gives me a good F natural. So you like that. It also gives me an A. Hard. So, but that means at the beginning, you may hear a difference. Do you hear a difference over this microphone in those opened notes?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely sounds more like in tune.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering how does making one vent hole do so much for the F and the A?
Yeah, the horn is a miracle of physics and magic and art. With a bell flare, likewise with the taper of a mouthpiece, you're talking about infinitely variable shapes that are infinitely combinable. That's why what the beauty of the natural horn is that it's the most acoustically pure for a tube. Once you start introducing things, like anybody who's ever played a brass instrument will tell you, when you use 1, 2, and 3, it doesn't sound good because there's so much spaghetti in there that it makes things funky. It's not what they would have done at the time, as far as we know, at all. But it gives us, it allows us to, if I played that without the fudge, I think it would get in the way of our understanding, if not our enjoyment of the piece. What makes it hard is that it's not just a difficult instrument that's slippery, but that you're playing Bach, and it's like playing Mozart. There's a purity that as an artist you're so much trying to do, and on the horn. And so I know with my colleagues, we talk to each other a lot about that, talking ourselves off the ledge, because we're trying to, we're trying to render this thing that's magnificent. And the sound, when you get it right, is so cool. And I think it's really stirring. And I think what's most fun about it is, and I've been trying to figure out what this is, but it's evocative sense. You read about the horn, and that's a word that's used a lot. And my question is why, or like, isn't that cool?